Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this webinar today. We're very excited to have you here with us, whether you've joined our webinars that we had the last quarter of last year, or this is your first time, welcome. It's great to have you on board with our career webinar. I'm Ann Baker. I'm the Vice President of the National Peace Corps Association, and I'm a return volunteer from Fiji. So this webinar will be recorded, and if you haven't yet done so, please do register online on our event page. I will put the link in our chat in a moment. And if you're registered there, then you will receive the follow-up email with the recording and the slides from today, and also a link to a survey. We really do want your input on these career webinars, so please do take that survey. We are very, very excited to have Dr. Ansted webinar the last year and the monthly series throughout this year. So thank you for joining in today. A little bit about NPCA in case you're not familiar with us. The National Peace Corps Association is the social impact organization driven by and for the Peace Corps community. We encourage you to join us to stay informed, connected, and engaged on the issues that are important to all of us. Membership is free at rpcv.org. And we heard from a lot of you that we needed to do more to help you with some of this post-service transition support and career support. So we created this series of webinars, and we're very excited to have you with us today. So I'm going to turn it over now to Dr. Ronda Ansted. She'll do a quick intro to herself, and we'll be off and running. So over to you, Ronda.
Great. Thank you so much, Anne. And it is a pleasure to be back. And so I also am an RPCV, and I was in South Africa, 2007 to 2009. And since I have returned, I have gotten more and more interested in helping people make the kind of contribution that they want to in the world through their careers. And so I am just very happy and honored to be working with NPCA so that I can share what I've learned through my private practice, be the Change Careers career consulting, and that I'm also basically doing and reaching out to people who are trying to make a career transition or find a way that they can make the kind of contribution that they want to. And so basically, I just wanted to start out with a Happy New Year to everyone. And since January is really the time for New Year's resolutions, NPCA, we wanted to be able to support you in doing that. And so this webinar, and one other thing that I just want to say is that that in the past 3 webinars that I did that Anne mentioned before, I gave a whole lot of content on how to identify the kinds of careers that you want to do, how to write a really compelling resume, work around networking and researching to help you get the kind of job that you want. So there is a ton of information out there already. And at the same time, what's even more important than knowing what to do is doing it. And so that's really what we're going to be talking about today, is how to support you in taking the actions so that you can get the job that you want in 2020. And so that being said, this is really a kickoff to a 7-day challenge that I'll be hosting on my Facebook group. And in fact, let me just put that in the chat box. And I put return on the wrong thing. And so if this is something that you're interested in actually getting daily support in taking action, this is the way to do it. And again, this will be in the follow-up email, and throughout the presentation, you'll get opportunities to join the Facebook group. And also, I want this to be as interactive as possible. I'm not going to be manning the chat while I'm giving the presentation, otherwise I go a little bit crazy, but I do want to respond to your questions. So as they come up, please type them in, and then Anne will help me at the end to answer, to get to everyone. And so let's start out with what you need to have an effective job search plan. And so again, a lot of this stuff is kind of the how-to, and just really encouraging you to not just look at the slide, but start implementing some of these action steps as we go along. And so in order for your job search plan to be effective, you've got to have some clarity about what you're trying to do, what your final goals are, and how you're going to get there. It's to have it be time bound. And what I mean by that is like, not I'm going to get to this someday, but I'm going to start on this tomorrow at 3 o'clock. And so the more that we can get specific about what you're going to do to go forward, the more likely you are to do it. Also, your plan needs to be actionable. And so that means something that you actually have control over. The other thing that we're really going to focus in on here today and through the 7-day challenge is that it builds on your strengths. I don't want you to try to set yourself up for failure by doing a ton of work outside of your comfort zone. Getting a new job is going to stretch you, but really what's important is that the majority of the work that you do focuses and leverages the things that you're innately good at. So throughout, in fact, I think throughout all of my webinars, I've been talking a lot about your strengths. And this is because this is what sets you up for success and also for happiness, because the more you're working with who you are, the chances are you're going to enjoy it versus working against the grain. Okay, so this, again, these 4 bullet points are about what can make an effective job search plan for you, but we also know that no plan ever survives contact with reality. So you'll also want to plan for that. So it's useful to anticipate that there's going to be things that get in your way, whether that's just general busyness, distractions, feeling demotivated, or frustrated. Often this process is a really frustrating one where you send in application after application after application and don't hear back. And so to keep those things from distracting you or keeping you from moving forward and taking control of the things you can do, you want to plan for what we know is going to happen. So let's start with just kind of where are you right now? And so I want to know how many of you, and if you can just put this in the chat box, and just kind of like a yes or no, where you could succinctly and clearly say, this is the kind of job that I want. And if this is something that you struggle with and feel comfortable sharing that, just say, yep, this is not something that I've got right now. I know that I want a job. I don't know exactly what kind of job that is. So if I could just get a couple yeses or nos just to make sure that the chat box is working too. So, okay, great. So we've got some yeses, some nos. I'm still trying to yes, I've got an idea. Okay. So, so even if it's not clear, we can brainstorm, we can get some clarity. For some people, other people, this is going to be your first step, is to get some kind of clarity. It doesn't have to be crystal clear, but it does have to be enough so that if you're sharing your idea, if someone asks you what you want, you can tell them in a way that they can help you. And so kind of the litmus test is, if you tell me and I've got a lead, or you tell some like all-knowing, all-powerful wizard, this is what I want, and that person gives you something that fits in with that, would you be happy with that job? So if you say, hey, I'm looking for a job, and they're like, all right, well, let's get you going. Scrubbing toilets at the local fast food restaurant, is that something that you would be happy with? If no, you need to get a little bit more specific. So again, if clarity is not what you have right now, that's perfectly fine, but that's going to be one of the first things that you want to do on your plan. So the next thing that I want to talk about is the research that tells us how to attain what we want. And basically that shows that we're much more likely to accomplish something if we schedule it, and if we make it easy to accomplish. And so if you set your goal as, I'm going to get a new job in 2 months, although that's time bound, that's also an outcome that you don't have complete control over. So what I want you to think about right now, and again, be realistic, but approximately how many hours a week can you dedicate to the job search without burning out? That is super important. So if you don't have a job right now, technically you could work 16 hours a day on this, or more if you don't need to sleep, but you're going to burn out if you do that. So what I want you to think about is realistically how many hours a week, and please put that in the chat box too. Do you think that you can work on your plan, or work on your job search? And so whether that's 1 hour a week, 30 minutes, 15 minutes a day. So some people it's like a part-time job, so 20 hours a week. And so again, just make sure that that's something that you can do without burning out. And okay, so there's a lot of people that are around the 2025, and then so I think that there's some real time that you can use. So let's get a little bit more specific. When are good times for you to do this? When is your energy highest, your brain clearest? Is it in the morning? Is it the afternoon? Is it the evening? If you've got some flexibility, then I want you to think in terms of when is the right time for you to schedule your job search work. And so we've got mornings, yep. And then we've got kind of afternoons. And so again, the point isn't that there's a best time of the day for everybody. The point is what works best for you. And so once you've got an idea of how much time you can spend on this, when you're going to be the best, then I want you to start bracketing that out. So that's going to be the time that you reserve for this work. Okay. Now, I also know that there are some people where putting time on your calendar doesn't necessarily mean you're going to do that. And so if you're familiar with the Myers-Briggs, we've got the people that are very conscientious. They make lists, they put times on their schedule, and they, do that. If it's on their calendar, then they're going to do it. And then there's people, and so those are considered judgers in the Myers-Briggs. It doesn't mean you're judgmental. I don't know why they use that term, but that's what it is. And then there's the perceivers, and we tend to be more go with the flow and see our calendar mostly as suggestions. And so again, this is working with your strengths. And so if you're the type of person where if you put it on your calendar, you're going to do it, then put this on your calendar. If you're the type of person that is motivated by inspiration, then take that into consideration. And you might have to work a little bit harder to find something that works for you. But just know that, who you are and what you can leverage to make sure that you keep moving towards your goals. Okay, so then let's talk about the actionable, and basically you want to break things down into bite-sized chunks. Getting a job, overwhelming. Putting time on my calendar to work on a job, that is actionable. And so one of the things that is really helpful is for you to think, what is the next action you can take by tomorrow? And that's one of the reasons why I've got this 7-day challenge, because one of the things that you could very easily do is commit and to doing that and join the Facebook group. And so again, just make this something difficult to not do, and so easy that it would be silly if you didn't do it. Okay, and then, so then, as I mentioned before, we want something that builds on your strengths and minimizes the things that you find challenging. So I wanted to show you what is 4 really effective ways to start and move toward finding a job. And so as we go through this, I want you to ask yourself, which of the following can you do well? Okay, so self-reflection. Know and to be able to articulate what you want, to be able to identify the gaps that you have. So this is knowing who you are and what you want out of life. So if you're a fairly introspective person, then self-reflection is going to be one of your strengths. And so that's just kind of like studying what's happening internally. And then there's the studying what's happening externally, the people who really good at research. And so for those people, knowing the type of organization that's going to hire people like you, identifying people. So getting on the internet and going to town. If that's something that you're good at, then that's one of the things that you're going to want to build your job search strategy on. Some people are really great at connecting with others, having those conversations, reaching out, and whether that's in groups or kind of one-on-one. So that's quote unquote networking, but I really like to frame it in terms of building your community. And that's a really effective way of getting a job. So if that's something that you're naturally good at, that needs to be front and center of your job search strategy. And then there's the people that might not be so good at talking, but maybe are better at writing. And so then for those people, you want to think in terms of how can you present yourself through writing? Whether that's your resume, whether that's your LinkedIn profile, whether that's joining online discussion forums and participating that way. So all 4 of these strategies can be really effective in helping you find a job. So I want to hear from you, either which of these 4 are something that you're good at, or if there's other strengths that you know about yourself that that can be really helpful in creating a job search and implementing that job search strategy. So how many people here? Okay, so connecting with others. So Catherine, yes, I recommend that you do that. And okay, so Susan is talking about research, Brandy, research and writing. And so there's, and so you're seeing that for some people, you've got a combination of these. And so again, if you're only feel comfortable with one, that doesn't mean you can't or won't do the other things, but you want to make sure that you start with your strengths and leverage that as much as possible. And the more fun that we have with this, the more accomplished you feel when you're doing this, the longer your energy is going to last. And so yeah, identifying your challenges as well can be useful. And so in terms of, you might need, if it's something that you need to do, then you're going to have to find ways to stay motivated. And again, the 7-day challenge is going to be a platform where we can explore that together. Okay, so basically what I'm trying to say, so if you've been a little bored so far, being like, okay, yeah, know all of that stuff, that's because it ain't rocket science. So the process of finding a job, you do not need to have, your PhD. You do not need to learn new skills necessarily. you basically just need to come up with actions that will lead you towards your goal and then take those actions. So, so know what you want, identify what you need to do to get there, and then identify when you're going to do those things, and then plan for when you get stuck. So again, some of this might seem kind of simple, but simple is your friend right now because this whole process tends to be very overwhelming. So I don't want you to make this more complicated than it is. You just need to know what you want, identify what you need to do to get you there, when you're going to do it, and then plan for the inevitable. Okay, so this is a journey. This is not something that you're gonna just spend 5 minutes and then you're gonna do. And so it looks like someone's getting really excited about this. So yes, we do have the capacity to write on the actual platform too. So I want to talk about, what do you need in order to stay fueled as you're going through this? Because the what you're going to do isn't the problem. It's the doing that often is the difficult part. And so in order to keep going until you get the job that you want, you need sustenance. And so basically, I think this is kind of a West Coast thing, but because I grew up in Seattle and we would go on hiking trips and we'd bring like a bag of Gorp, good old raisins and peanuts. And so basically we're going to give you the I don't know what to call it, the non-tangible trail mix for your career journey. And this was inspired by Dr. Gabrielle Ottinger, I think is how you pronounce her name. And she wrote a book, Rethinking Positive Thinking. And so basically what you want to do is start out with your goal. And then once you're clear about what you want to do, then you want to spend some time thinking about your outcome. What is your goal going to give you once you've achieved that? How is your life going to be different? And so that is a process of actually imagining, using all your senses to think through what will that feel like to have the job that I really want? What what would I be hearing? What would I be eating? What is my day going to look like? Getting very detail oriented. And so that's kind of positive thinking, creative visualization, that kind of stuff. And our brain is very powerful. It can help us envision where we want to go to. However, the way our brain works, very interesting, because once you have that very vivid understanding of what your life will look like, your brain feels like you've already achieved it. And so if you stop there, and that's what Rethinking Positive Thinking talks a lot about in her research, that you actually get demotivated and you don't take action because that sense of urgency has left when you've thought clearly about what you want. So, so to make sure that you go forward, you want to think through, do a reality check. What is going to be my resistance to doing this? And we all have it. We all have our internal obstacles. And so again, this is the reality check. What is going to keep us from moving forward? And once we've got some clarity, and so for me, I'll just make this personal here. I can just go down internet rabbit holes like nobody's business. And so just finding ways to distract myself, especially right now with the news cycle, it's really, really easy for me to focus on everything that's happening out there and not what I can do right now. And so since I'm clear about that, then I come up with a plan. How am I going to address that when that comes forward? And so by taking these final 2 steps, this is how you're going to make sure that you keep moving forward, that you recognize what's going to be difficult for you, and often you want to look for those triggers. What happens when I want to distract myself. And for me, when I get a sense of overwhelm, that's when I just turn to YouTube or the internet and just like, give me something to distract my mind from this. And so the plans that I've been working with is when I feel that overwhelm, that I take some deep breaths. And that helps to calm down my nervous system, gets oxygen into my brain, and helps me to think a little bit clearly. And then I can ask myself, what do I really need to do right now? So your plan and for your resistance is going to be personal, but there are some different strategies that I can share with you. Okay, so let's just go through this process a little bit right now. So just to kind of get you started, I'm going to give you your goal. Your goal, since you're here, your goal is to create a job search strategy that works for you. Okay, and so the outcome of that is to get a job that you love. And so that's one of the things that I'm just going to pause for a moment, because I want to give us time to really imagine what that looks like. And so what your day would be like, how you would feel during your day, what you would be doing, how you'd feel afterwards. And so just take a moment to imagine you've got a job that you love. How would that change your life? And this is something that I'm going to encourage you to do actually on a regular basis, because that gives us our motivation. That's what we're moving toward, is not the journey, but the outcome of this job that is a fabulous fit for you that you love. So even if that wasn't quite enough time, I just wanted to, give you a moment to get started. Now I want you to think about, what is your resistance? And that is something that, again, if you feel comfortable sharing that with the group, please put that in the chat of what is it inside of you that's gonna keep you from moving forward? What has kept you from accomplishing your goals in the past? And so again, like a lot of my resistance is I do tend to get overwhelmed by what's happening out there. And so that's one of the things I need to plan for. What about you guys? What keeps you from moving forward? Yeah, fear that what I want doesn't want me back. Susan, that is so powerful, because we forget that a job search has a lot to do with our identity, right? And that there is a sense of rejection, that if we apply for a job and we don't get it, then that's a reflection on us. And so our fear of that happening, that's a really common thing. And yeah, we're seeing a lot of that, the fear, getting rejected. And so some people are better at making plans than they are at implementing them. And so yeah, I think, understanding what keeps you from taking that first action step is going to be really useful. And finding the right place to do this, the work of tailoring your resume and making sure you've got all the qualifications. So I think that that might be a little bit of overwhelm too. And yeah, I mean, so there's a lot of really good things. So thank you for sharing all of this with me. And knowing that a lot of times it's our thinking, our fears, our, oh, is this going to mean that I have to take a pay cut? Am I being too needy? Is my network going to get sick of me because I keep asking them questions? So it's our thoughts that often get in the way of taking action. And so, so now I just want us to take a moment to think. So when we sit down to do our work and then we immediately do something that is not taking us in the direction that we want to go in, what can we do in that moment? And like I said, for me, and taking like 3 deep breaths, and often I'll actually like stand up, because when you're sitting too long, that often gets you really sluggish. Movement is really helpful. Taking a walk can be good. Just doing 30 seconds of stretching can be good. And so think what gives you energy. And I am going to encourage you to, find things that give you sustainable energy. So, so caffeine comes with a crash generally. So that's certainly one way, getting, a cup of coffee or tea or something like that. But I also want to think of ways that don't end in a crash that can help get you excited about this. Listening to music, like I said, taking a walk, stretching. So what are some of the things? And this is super useful to put in the chat group, because then we can kind of inspire each other. And so, so what are some ways that you can keep moving even when your resistance kicks in? So listening to webinars that are very inspiring, perhaps. So there we go, getting some rewards. Absolutely. We're going to talk about that, because there's actually some things that you can do that are free, simple, don't take a lot of time, that give us a kind of our brains a hit of dopamine. And so research gratitudes, I love that one. And so spending some time thinking about what's going right for you, what you've, the friends, the family, all of that. And having, little reminders that can be useful. Sometimes I'll put like Post-it notes around my computer, just to, whether it's like inspirational, like you got this, or remember to breathe. So yeah, and then there can be like, working with other people. Thank you, Victoria. Scheduling some time with me, or scheduling time with someone who can help and support you. And then, so yeah, there's these little rewards. And if you can structure that, like, I'm not going to watch my episode of Trash TV until I've spent 30 minutes doing that, then yes, then that's a way that you can refresh. Okay. Good. Thank you guys for sharing all of that. And so hopefully, you might have learned or recognized something from what someone else said. So let's talk about some other strategies to keep you motivated. Okay, so we talked about what demotivates, distracts, rails your efforts to find the job. So actually, I just got a little bit ahead of myself. But let's talk about, so before we're talking about the plan, and so now I want us to think a little bit about not so much a reward or something that you can do if you're about to go down this rabbit hole, but in general, what motivates you? What encourages you? And so if feeling like going through this process, there's a sense of rejection. I applied for something, I didn't even hear back. Not only did I not get an interview, it just went down the black hole. So what are some of the things that is that opposite? And so I think we talked about some of that, like gratitude, super, super useful. So is there anything else that people want to share about what personally motivates, inspires, encourages you to keep going? Is it talking with people? Yeah, so being in a work environment. And so so some of that, even though, you know, being in a work environment is really helpful when you don't have a job. And you're like, okay, getting a job, I can do that. Is there a way that you can create something like that for yourself? And whether that is to go to a co-working space or a coffee shop or something like that. And so if getting your efforts recognized, right? And so then that's going to be something that, for example, if you join the 7-day challenge, then that's going to be one of the things that you do is you share what you've done. And then we're going to like give you a little ovation for that. And so put yourself in situations where you can get motivated. And so thank you, Catherine. Exactly. We can, being a part of a community is one of the most motivating things, whether that's face-to-face or virtual. So again, these kinds of webinars, other work that NPCA and your local RPCV chapter does, any way that you can get support from others can be super useful. And so here's just a couple of other things. And some of these, you know, since I prepared this ahead of time, there might be some redundancies. But the other thing is, how can we make things fun? And so a couple people mentioned, you know, rewards can make things fun. Putting on your favorite music can make things fun. Like having a lineup of, you know, goofy YouTube videos can make things fun. Challenging, you know, having a contest with other people. So again, and this came from, there's some really good work with, I'm going to forget her name, which is really bad, but she wrote the book, Jane McGonigal wrote the book, Reality is Broken, and how games can, something about how games can make the world a better place. And basically, play, fun, and games are a part of our neurowiring. We evolved as humans playing. Animals play too. It is a really great way to learn. And so by making, you know, and it's a little bit of, you know, why am my brain is just like completely not working, but the spoonful of sugar, you know, Disney, Mary Poppins, you know, anything that we can do to make things just a little bit more joyful, not only makes the medicine go down a little bit easier, but also gives us more energy. So making the process social, that's something that we talked about. And accountability. So knowing that someone is kind of watching you, and not in a stalkery way, but just that, for me, that is super useful. Some people, again, if you put it on the calendar, they're going to do it. For me, I'm much more on the perceiving scale of the Myers-Briggs, and I do much better if I know that somebody's expecting work from me at a certain time. And And then clarity. So as I mentioned earlier, there's some themes that run through these webinars that I give. And one is strengths, the other is clarity. So knowing what your goals are, knowing what the action steps are, and to make that something that you know exactly what to do. Instead of sitting down again, like, all right, what am I going to do today? If you can plan about that during our time here, what you're going to do for your first step, then that makes it so much easier. Incentives and rewards. So these are all the things that can really help keep you going. All right, so I'm going to give you a couple of other strategies. Both of these came from Jane McGonigal, and Reality is Broken. And so, and also BJ Fogg, he has, and all of this will be in the email that we send after the webinar. So I'll give you all these resources. But BJ Fogg, he's written, done a lot of work on something called Tiny Habits. And it is about coming up with a 30-second action item that you do. And that, he's got this whole system, but once you do it, you give yourself a little celebratory move. And so one of my favorites that I use is the Homer Simpson woohoo. And so this, when I was talking earlier about like simple, silly little things that give you a little jolt of dopamine, and dopamine is a very effective natural stimulant that keeps us moving forward. So something like woohoo. I also found this other little image, like the little minions with their little pom-poms. And so I want you to think of something that makes you smile that you can do after you've accomplished something, even if it's like, okay, I've sat down, I put this, opened up my calendar and put a date in. Woohoo! And that, when I do that, that again, it brings a smile to my face, makes this a little bit more fun. And then we've got the opposite. So let's talk about this concept of fun failures for a moment. And this is some of the most intriguing research that I saw in Jane McGonigal's book. And it was this one game, I think it was called like a Monkey Ball or something like that, or Monkey Ball 2. And they wired these players up and to find out like when they were the most engaged and when they were the most excited about playing this game. And what they found was that it was when they lost. And so that was unexpected. And for me, this lights a little light bulb in my head where I'm like, if losing can make us more engaged, if making a mistake can bring us, can make us hop right back on the horse, then how can we utilize that? Because often when something doesn't work out, we feel exactly the opposite. We feel disengaged and demotivated and hard on ourselves. And so that was what they were expecting. And so as they went through the data, they noticed that the reason why they were more engaged when they quote unquote failed was because when they made a mistake, there was this goofy little animation that happened. And so this was this one little game called like monkey, some bowling alley. And if you rolled a gutter ball, then the monkeys inside a ball floated off into space and made some really crazy animation. And so here's your challenge, is if there is some way that when you make a mistake or when things don't go the way you want them to, is there something that you can say or do, a little noise that you can make that just kind of reshifts your thinking to, oh, that was horrible, to, oh, wow, that was really goofy. Okay, what can I do again? How can I learn from this? And that's the other thing, is that when you make a mistake, to take away the judgment and then get into the learning, and what can I do differently to try again? That's why these gamers were engaged when they failed. And so, so again, I'm going to show some of my biases, that I am obviously a Homer Simpson fan. And so this is something that I do pretty regularly, as I just, when something doesn't go my way, I just give myself a big old dough, and it always works. And some, some of the other things that other people have used have been like the little, the little sad trombone, the little mwah, mwah, mwah. And so I just want you to take a moment to think about what acknowledges the fact that this didn't go according to plan, but can also like kind of snap you out of it. And then the last image that I had was like the whole Scooby-Doo ruh-roh. And so again, these things bring a little bit more joy, a little bit more spark, and also just help us to keep moving. Okay. So, so one of the things that, that we talked about as being useful for, keeping going is having clear goals and clear action items. And so I just want to talk a little bit about that. And basically, the past 3 webinars that I did give a lot of the very concrete action items that you can take to figure out what you want to do, to get that clarity, to build your network, to talk to people, to research organizations, to work on your resume, how to make it compelling, all of that kind of stuff. And so please feel free to go back and watch those. That's why we record them, so that they can be a reference to you. I've also created my Career Design Studio, which is an online tool that breaks down the process into 30 different action items. And so that's something that, that can help you if you don't know what to do next. Use the tools that are available. And so, like I said, that gives over 30 activities to help you identify your goals and strengths, prioritizing what you want in a career, creating your job search strategy, and honing your job search tools, your resume, LinkedIn profile, all of that. And so, so again, this isn't rocket science. You don't have to recreate the wheel. People have been looking for jobs for decades, if not centuries now. And there's tools out there that can help you. And obviously the 7-day challenge, that's why we're offering this, is that you don't have to do this alone. You can do this in a community. And so the other thing that my Career Design Studio also offers is strategies to help you overcome obstacles. And some of those, we've already talked about that, right? The fun failures, that's one way of dealing with, rejection or frustration that you didn't do things exactly right. And the celebratory moves, some meditations. I mean, there's just really good information that can help you move forward. But to do that, to use it, you've got to take action. And so that's really what all of this is gearing up for, is what are you going to do next? And so I just want to take a little bit of a pause here and give you a chance to think about, what is your next step? What is something that you can do today or tomorrow that moves you further, closer to your goals? And so again, that can be something as simple like I'm gonna put some time on my calendar, but I want to see in the chat box what can you do, and as you're thinking about that, I'm going to continue talking a little bit, because one of the things that's really helpful is to really get it to the next step that you can take. And so, for example, I need to network more, right? So how do you network? That is a little bit too broad, but I'm going to come up with a list of 5 people to talk to about my job. That is, that's something that you can do. So update your resume or CV. And so Brandy, what I'd encourage you is like, so what do you need in order to update that? Do you need to think about what are your accomplishments? Do you need to get clear about what kind of job you're going for so that you can update your resume for that? Okay, the Occupational Outlook Handbook. So, doing research on what's out there, right? And seeing what fits you. And so again, some of these are a little bit big. And so, but at the same time, I like this concept of, planning for when the resistance kicks in. So that can be, so you're going to apply for more jobs, but before you do that, you're going to plan for, all right, when my resistance kicks in, this is what I'm going to do. And so there's so many different ways that you can keep going. And so that's what I want you to think about. And thank you, Sarah. I really appreciate that. And so, yeah, talking to people in the fields, what fields are you going to focus on? All right. So there's some really good first steps. Here's another one that I'm going to recommend, obviously, is to join the 7-day New Year challenge. And so what this will help you do is it's about 15 minutes every day to help you identify your goals. So at the end of 7 days, you'll know what your job search strategy is, what you have to do to get there, help you identify when you're going to do those things, and planning for when you get stuck. So if what we've talked about is still a little amorphous or it doesn't feel like you can utilize it right away, please join this Facebook group. And I'm going to put that in the chat box again as soon as I'm able to copy and paste it. But again, it is coming up with the name of one person who you can ask for help. It can be to find the phone number of that person. So just make it very, very small, really difficult to say no. And you'll find that once you take a little itsy bitsy baby step, then the next step is that much easier. And often it just kind of slides into that. Okay, so now we're at the phase of do you have any questions? And I just realized that I privately messaged somebody instead of putting the, technology. So was there anything that I talked about that wasn't clear that you want more understanding on? Please write that in the chat box. And okay, so we've got an ENTP, Best Actionable Plans in the Career Search. Okay, so the first thing that I think about when I think of an ENTP is the extroversion. And so that is one of the things that I would recommend, is that you're going to do best if you are working with other people, either asking for advice or a community like this one where we can kind of come together and support each other. And obviously, if you're a really strong P, then scheduling things might be a little bit more difficult. So accountability partners can be really, really useful if you respond to that. So if the internal accountability doesn't work for you, try some external accountability. And that's another thing that we can set up in during the 7-day challenge is who would like to work with someone one-on-one offline to keep things moving. And so knowing yourself obviously is really helpful, because then you know, here's where I tend to get stuck and here's where my strengths are. And so my career design studio does have different personality and interest assessments. So if if you're not a self-reflective person by nature, doing something like an assessment can help you identify, here are some strategies that are going to work for you or ones that are not. And so that's just another tool that you can use. Is there's a ton of free assessments out there and lots of versions of Myers-Briggs. So that can be a really good way of going forward. So anything else? Is there anything that I missed, Anne, as far as different options? Hold on, I'm going to stop sharing. Any other questions that you might have?
I don't think I noticed anything in the chat. I've been following the chat for typing in there. I'm going to put one reminder in here in the chat is where you can find all of these resources on the NPCA website too. There's a page on our website that has all the recordings of the webinars and also the schedule coming up, and you can click on any of those and use that to register. And if you haven't registered for this one, please make sure you do, because that's where we get the email list to send out the follow-up with all the information that, that Rhonda had shared with us today. The link to the recording, the slides, and some other materials. So please do make sure you register for that. I'm looking to see if there are any other questions.
Okay, and so yeah, I hope that was helpful, and so I can put on the website where you can register for this, or do you have that at your fingertips, Anne?
Well, I typed in the page that has all of the webinars. Let me put in the link to just this one, and that's the page where you should register. Let me just find it real quick. Let's see here.
And
I had it at the very beginning, but not everybody was on there yet. So,
okay, so there is a question about, you know, what to do if it was not your choice to leave an organization, and how to deal that with future employers. And obviously that is there's a lot of factors that are going to influence that. But what I really want, where to start is to be really clear about what you want to do and why you're a good fit for that job. And then when you're talking about that to during an interview, for example, why did you leave your last job? Then you can say something like, you know, the previous job that I was in wasn't the best fit for me, and that's why this one allows me to do A, B, C, and D. And so you can be very very straightforward, but obviously you don't want to give a ton of details. You want to make sure that you're talking about what you bring and what kind of contributions you're going to make. to acknowledge that, you know, we all know that not every job is going to be a good fit for everybody. So so I think that that understanding why that didn't work and making some choices to do things differently, that's what you can communicate to potential employers. So again, if that doesn't feel like that's enough information, then please join the Facebook group or reach out to me individually. We can schedule some time. So I do offer a free 30-minute consultation. And if it makes sense to work with a career coach to help you overcome some of these obstacles, I would be delighted to work with you. I love working with RPCVs, and this is why I do what I do, is I believe that the world is a better place when we're all doing the work that that is a good fit for us and where we can make our unique contribution. So please know that this is possible and that you don't have to do this alone. So, okay, I think that's it. And thank you, Catherine, for the recommendation. And please know again that I am really rooting for you guys. Like, this is tough stuff. And NPCA is super committed to making sure that you get the tools that you need to live the kind of life that you want to live. And so, Anne, thank you again for inviting me to be a part of this. And I am excited to see what you guys can do. Hopefully I'll see you tomorrow in my Facebook page. And otherwise, we're doing another webinar in a month. And that again is about using your strengths for the job search. So if you're like, I don't know what my strengths are, come join us next month and we'll talk about that.
Well, thank you so much for the webinar today, and thank you all for joining us. Please do sign up for next month on February 20th, I believe it is. And yep, February 20th, leveraging your strengths for the job search. And thank you for joining us. We'll be sending an email with the link to the recording and all the slides and other materials.
And one last thing, like, we really, really, really do pay attention to your feedback, and we try to be super responsive. And so I just put another link in the chat box for our evaluation form. So if you could fill that out, that would be great. That'll also come in the email. But the more information we get from you, the better we can make these. So please give us your feedback, and that'll be really helpful.
Yes, thank you for reiterating that. We are a community-driven organization. We need to hear from you. So tell us what's working, and if there's more that we need to add and more that we need to do, please do respond and take that survey. So thank you again, everybody, for joining us today.
All right. Take care. Happy New Year.